history speaks.
It ought to be a continuing, massive lobbying.
That's right.
Now, not just one day. Every time people come in that town, they ought to go straight to Capitol Hill, to the departments of government, Justice Department, Department of Commerce, Health, Welfare, and Education. They're just going day in and day out.
If you go there and ask Johnson for what we really want, you got much chance of getting it flying through the top of this house.
I think we got to pit the president against the Congress. I don't think we ought to make this an anti-Lyndon Johnson battle.
I
really think that we ought to leave Lyndon alone and go on and throw attention on the Congress and have Lyndon in a position where he'll almost be forced to support us.
I'm not saying this.
At that moment, Johnson's attention was elsewhere. He was running for re-election, and the war in Vietnam was taking a decisive turn. The enemy's Tet Offensive destroyed U.S. illusions that the end of the war was in sight. Johnson's popularity plummeted. Johnson almost lost the New Hampshire presidential primary to anti-war candidate Eugene McCarthy. 4 days later, Robert Kennedy entered the race. George Wallace, who had built his political career by defending racial segregation in the South, was gaining support up north for his own third-party candidacy. In the national political turmoil, few were paying attention to a labor conflict in Tennessee. Memphis, Tennessee. A bitter strike of black garbage workers echoed the issues of the Poor People's Campaign, the same issues King planned to bring to Washington.
And I had 7 kids in school, trying to educate my kids and trying to buy a home. It was really rough, but I know that something had to happen, that we couldn't continue on making $1.04 an hour.
The city refused to recognize the local sanitation workers union. In late January, the union accused the city of racial bias. Days later, 2 black workers were accidentally killed on the job. Their families were not entitled to compensation. The workers decided they had had enough.
So we decided we were going to be men and stand up and be men, and that's what we did. 1,300 men decided that they was tired and weren't going to take it anymore.
I say to you that I was with you for 4 years and you know me, and that when I tell you something, you can believe it.
Mayor Loeb's attitude toward the strikers was that of a father whose children had gone astray. He simply didn't understand that instead of a garbage strike, he had a racial problem, and he never did understand that.
The mayor refused to negotiate with the union. 11 days into the strike, the city's black leaders marched with the workers.
The march went fine for 2 or 3 blocks. But as we approached Madison Street, I think, the policemen began to come in and to move us over further and further to the curb.
Tempers flared. Police moved in with nightsticks and mace.
They fired upon us, and that was the turning point. And if they would fire upon us, they would fire upon anybody. Nobody was safe in Memphis.
The strike entered its 2nd month. Strike leader James Lawson asked his friend Martin Luther King to come to Memphis.
The staff was really disturbed that Martin would even consider going to Memphis. We were trying to organize poor whites, Hispanics, Southern blacks, Northern blacks. I mean, there was just a tremendous organizing job. And I didn't know how you could take on anything else. And he said, well, Jim Lawson has been around for so long, and here, garbage workers on strike. He just wants me to come in, make a speech, and then lead a march in the morning. And I'll be right back.
The attitude of the white community was one of dread. There's no other way to describe it. Please bear in mind that all of us who could read knew about Watts and Newark and Detroit and all of the troubles that we'd had in our big city ghettos. And we knew about the march, Selma, Alabama, and Mrs. Montgomery, and Rosa Parks in Montgomery, excuse me. All these things we knew, and somehow or other, The name of Martin Luther King Jr. was associated with deep trouble, and Memphis dreaded his approach.
All labor has dignity. But you are doing another thing. You are reminding not only Memphis, but you are reminding the nation that it is a crime for people to live in this rich nation and receive starvation wages.
King's Poor People's Campaign was scheduled to start in less than a month, but he promised to return to Memphis. The next morning, in Mississippi, he resumed his recruiting.
We were very excited about this Poor People campaign that he spoke about. It's the first time that the concentration had been on poor peoples and their living conditions, and we wanted to be a part of that. That's what we had been working toward. We felt through voter registration that political power would bring economic power.
I'm not the only one. There's just so many of us right around. Just don't have children, don't have shoes, clothes is around. They's naked and hungry. Part time you have to cook your children pinto beans morning, down, and supper. They don't know where else get a good meal. We go work in Miss Ann's house for $2 a day. If we don't want to do that, she tell us, well, you got to move.
Now, I want some of you all to go to Washington with us. Even if you have to bring a whole family, we are going to have in Washington facilities, and we're going to have food, and we are going to demand that the government do something about these conditions. Greg, tell Jose and Ralph to rush on. Hello, give me some.
Despite King's personal popularity, SCLC had trouble recruiting people. As he traveled north, King met more indifference.
The South is a different place than New York.
Well, that's true.
You can't tell the young kids today this in Harlem that nonviolence. You can't get through to them with nonviolence today. You have to have some type of other approach with them. And I say that Dr. King's approach is a little outdated for Harlem, for Bedford-Stuyvesant, or any part of New York.
King's nonviolent approach would be directly challenged when he returned to Memphis. On the morning of March 28th, a tense and restless crowd waited 2 hours before King arrived. The strike was in its 7th week. Some younger supporters had grown impatient with the strike leaders.
While we were marching, I was about in the first 1/3 of the march, as I could tell at that point. And we began to hear windows breaking. We began to hear loud rustling and uneasiness among the marchers. And then we began to see individuals who were stepping out of the march and throwing things at one dude.
When all the glass started breaking and the noise and the police cars were running, the sirens, and everybody was all confused and just running over each other.
Fearing for King's safety, his aides commandeered a passing car and drove him to a nearby hotel. It was the first time King had led marchers who had turned to violence. Secluded for the night, he braced himself for criticism. If he couldn't control a single march in Memphis, how could he control a mass movement of poor people in the nation's capital? The FBI, monitoring King in Memphis, used its press contacts to create doubts about the upcoming campaign in Washington. The strike continued. SCLC staffers worked to ensure nonviolence at the next march. A distraught King and his closest aide, Ralph Abernathy, left for Atlanta.
That evening we went to the Abernathys for dinner, and we spent the evening at their home. And Martin, of course, liked to eat, and Mrs. Abernathy had some of his favorite food and even homemade ice cream.
And we did not talk about Memphis. The news came on, and whenever there was a flash on TV about it, he got very quiet, and he was really, really sort of depressed. And I think he was more depressed that night, I believe, than I'd ever seen him. The violence really got to him.